The hostess had barely finished saying my name when the man at the corner table shot up so fast his chair screeched across the hardwood floor. I felt every pair of eyes in Redwood Grill swing toward me the moment my wheels crossed the threshold. I had been in this position before, judged before I even spoke, but nothing prepared me for what came out of his mouth. "Seriously, you should have mentioned you were like this." His voice echoed through the dining room, slicing through clinking glasses and soft jazz. The hostess froze. A server dropped a fork. Someone at the bar snorted. My hands tightened on my wheels. My heart thudded against my ribs so loudly I could swear it echoed. I tried to keep my face calm, but the heat crawling up my neck betrayed me. I said quietly, "I am here for a conversation. Nothing more." He rolled his eyes dramatically. I did not agree to babysit a disability. The room erupted into that awful half-gasped sound people make when they pretend to be shocked, but secretly enjoy the drama. A woman at the next table whispered, "Poor girl." A man in a baseball cap lifted his phone as if this were entertainment. I could see the reflection of myself on his screen. The blonde woman in the blazer, the expensive chair, the embarrassment rising like a tide. I swallowed hard and forced a breath. I had survived much worse than some man throwing a tantrum over a blind date. I reached for my bag, intending to turn away with what dignity I had left, but the rug beneath my front wheels caught the edge of a loose thread. My chair jerked forward. I lurched. For a terrifying second, I felt gravity tilt and my stomach plummet as if I were about to hit the floor. A few people gasped. One laughed. One actually clapped. I caught myself at the last-second fingers scraping the wheel rim. Pain shot through the muscle near my wrist. A shaky exhale left my chest, and I finally backed away from the table. The man scoffed. "Unbelievable." Then louder so the entire restaurant would hear, "I thought I matched with Claire Winslow, the CEO, not someone who hides things." My ears rang. My stomach twisted. Someone near the bar said, "Oh man, this is going viral." And sure enough, I saw red recording icons rising like fireflies in the dim restaurant light. I turned toward the exit, not trusting my voice, my hands trembling on the wheels. "Just get to the door," I told myself. "Just breathe." But before I reached it, a server rushed past me carrying a full tray of glasses. One slipped. It fell, shattered. Reflexively, I flinched. More eyes, more whispers, more humiliation. I felt stripped raw like I was 16 again in a gym class locker room when a girl asked if God had punished me. I kept pushing forward toward the faint hope of fresh air and escape. But then the front doors burst open with a gust of cool night wind. A man walked in. His presence shifted the air immediately. He wore a denim jacket dusted with sawdust or something like it. His hands were rough tan stained faintly with engine grease. A mechanic, out of place in this upscale restaurant full of polished shoes and mirrored walls. He paused just inside the doorway, eyes adjusting to the dim light. Then his gaze found me. I braced myself for pity or discomfort, or that quick flicker of guilt people gave when they realized they were staring. But he did none of that. He looked straight at me, not at the chair, not at my legs, at me. His walk toward me was steady quiet, calm, the opposite of every frantic heartbeat inside my body. When he reached me, he lowered his voice so only I could hear. "Ma'am, do you want help?" My breath caught. No judgment, no hesitation, no assumptions, just a simple question spoken with dignity. I nodded before I even realized I had done it. He positioned himself behind my chair, hands ready but not touching until I signaled. Then he guided me away from the sea of staring faces as if shielding me from the cruelty behind us. As we neared the door, someone in the dining room muttered, "Seriously, a mechanic?" And another voice laughed. "This is the biggest blind date disaster ever." I ignored them. For the first time that night, I focused only on the rhythm of my breathing and the presence of the man walking behind me like a silent barrier against the world. The cold air met my face when the doors opened again, sharp but strangely soothing. He stepped beside me instead of behind me, now leveling his height so his eyes were aligned with mine. "Are you all right?" I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. Everything inside me was a knot of shame and anger and exhaustion. But beneath it all was a quiet sense of safety I had not felt in years. I finally managed a whisper. "Thank you." He nodded once, the kind of nod that meant he understood without needing details. His voice was steady when he asked home or somewhere you can breathe. It was the way he said breathe, as if he saw the storm inside me, that made something in my chest loosen. And in that frozen parking lot, under the yellow glow of a street lamp, with the humiliation of the restaurant still burning behind me, one thing became clear. My life had just shifted. I just did not know how much yet. The cold air outside Redwood Grill wrapped around me like a shock, but somehow it felt gentler than the heat of the humiliation still burning beneath my skin. I could still hear the muffled laughter through the restaurant windows, the faint chatter, the sound of someone replaying the clip they had just recorded of me. But the man standing beside me did not look back at the building. He looked only at me, as if the rest of the world had suddenly stopped mattering. He shifted his weight slightly, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, the scent of motor oil and cool night air lingering around him. I could tell he was waiting for me to catch my breath before asking anything more. I tightened my fingers around the wheels of my chair, my voice barely steady when I finally said, "I do not want to go home yet." He nodded once slowly. "Somewhere you can breathe then." His voice held no pressure, no push, just an invitation to exist without being stared at. I found myself nodding, surprising even myself. He gestured toward the sidewalk. "There is a food truck a block down. Good lighting. No crowds. No rude people." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how gently he said rude people, as if he refused to give that awful moment inside any more power. He walked beside me, matching my pace instead of walking ahead like most people did. The wheels of my chair hummed softly over the pavement, and the night felt strangely calm for the first time in hours. When we reached the food truck, the bright yellow bulbs strung across its awning cast a warm glow over the small clearing of picnic tables. A couple sat eating tacos, quietly paying no mind to us. For once, I did not feel like a spectacle. The mechanic stepped slightly in front of me. "Do you like grilled cheese?" he asked, not assuming, just offering. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. "Yes." He ordered 2 sandwiches without asking for anything fancy or diet-specific. Most people assumed I followed some strict regimen because of my disability. He did not. When he handed me my plate, a bit of melted cheese slid off the corner and dropped onto my lap. My whole body stiffened instantly. I could already feel a familiar rush of panic rising. I hated messes. Not because of vanity, but because once in a crowded cafe, someone had commented loudly about how disabled people always needed help cleaning up. Old trauma clung to me like a shadow. For a moment, I froze, waiting for pity, for awkwardness, for him to reach forward too quickly or make me feel helpless. But Cal simply reached into his back pocket and pulled out a slightly frayed cloth, the kind mechanics kept for wiping tools. He held it out to me. "Everybody drops food. It's okay." His tone made it sound like the most ordinary thing in the world. Something inside me softened just a little. I took the cloth, wiped the cheese from my lap, and took a bite. The sandwich was warm, buttery, and grounding in a way I desperately needed. He sat across from me, elbows on the table, fingers loosely interlocked. He looked at me without staring, listened without interrupting, breathed without making the moment about him. After a few quiet bites, he finally spoke. "I am sorry that happened in there." I shook my head. "You did not do it." He paused. "No, but I saw it." His voice shifted, something firm beneath it. "I do not like bullies." The way he said it made me look up fully. His gaze was steady, unwavering. He did not speak like a man trying to impress or a man trying to rescue me. He spoke like a man who had seen enough of life to know cruelty when he saw it and did not tolerate it. I studied him for a moment, a denim jacket with faint oil stains, fingernails still darkened from working with engines, tired eyes that had probably seen their share of long days. He was nothing like the men I usually encountered in my world full of boardrooms, quarterly earnings, and corporate chess games. Nothing polished, nothing staged, nothing rehearsed, and maybe that was why I felt strangely safe. We ate in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable silence, but the kind that felt like a warm blanket after being out in the cold too long. After a few minutes, he asked, "You want to tell me why you went on a blind date tonight?" His tone was gentle, not nosy. I hesitated. "I do not really know. Hope, I guess." He nodded slowly, leaning back. "Hope is not a bad thing." For some reason, the simple statement made my eyes sting. I blinked it away. "What about you?" I asked quickly, needing the attention off me. "Were you there alone?" He shrugged. "Fixed a fuse box in the kitchen earlier. Stopped in for a drink on my way home. Wrong place, right time, I guess." His lips twitched in something like a half smile, and I felt myself breathe a little easier. Something about him made the humiliation from earlier feel distant, like a storm that had already passed. After we finished eating, he tossed our plates into the trash and came back to stand beside my chair again, hands resting casually in his pockets. "You look tired," he said softly. I almost told him I was fine, but the truth was written all over my body. I had been tired long before tonight, tired of being seen as less, tired of pretending every cruel look did not sting, tired of carrying everything alone. He nodded toward the end of the street. "There is a quiet spot near the river 2 blocks down. Nice view. No crowds. Want me to walk with you?" A simple question, no strings attached yet. It felt like the beginning of something that made the night less heavy. I nodded once. "Yes." He gave me that calm, steady look again, then stepped beside me as we headed toward the river, matching his steps to the sound of my wheels. And for the first time in a long time, the world felt a little less cruel. The riverfront was quiet except for the soft hum of distant traffic and the whisper of water brushing against the stone edge. The night felt cooler here, calmer, washed clean of the noise and humiliation that clung to me back at Redwood Grill. Cal walked beside me without rushing, without glancing down at my chair, without adjusting his pace out of obligation. It was like he instinctively knew how to move alongside me instead of above me. We stopped beneath an old street lamp. Its glow was warm, uneven, and flickered every so often, like it was trying its best to stay alive. Cal leaned against the railing, one boot crossed over the other, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "You all right?" he asked, not the kind of question that demanded a performance. Just a gentle check-in. I let out a long breath. "I am getting there." He nodded. "Good." Silence settled between us again, but the kind that let me breathe, not the kind that made me feel like I owed something. After a moment, he said, "People can be cruel. You did not deserve that." His voice stayed steady, not heated, not pitying, just certain. I stared out at the river. It is not the first time something like that has happened. I immediately regretted admitting it, but Cal just tilted his head a little, waiting. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to tell some tragic backstory. And the strange thing is, he didn't make me. He didn't ask why, or when, or how long. He simply said, "Anyone who talks like that shows who they are, not who you are." The words were simple, but my chest tightened as if he had pressed directly on a bruise I never acknowledged. "Why did you step in back there?" I asked. It had been sitting in my mind since the moment he stood in front of that table like a shield. Cal shrugged the corner of his mouth, lifting. "I do not like bullies." That was it. No grand speech, no hero act, no expectation. I studied him. Most men I met wanted something from me. Status, access, business connections, or they wanted to feel like saviors because of my disability, treating me as if helping me made them noble. But Cal stood here with the attitude of someone who did not need anything I had. That alone felt unreal. "So what do you do?" I asked, changing the subject organically. He smiled faintly. "I work at Becker's Auto Garage. My family has owned it for years." I stared at his jacket and boots again. Suddenly, everything made sense. The oil stains the calloused hands, the steady patience in his movements. "You are a mechanic." He nodded. "Pretty much grew up breathing engine fumes." I laughed softly. "And you walked into a fancy restaurant tonight." He shrugged. "Had to fix a fuse box in the back room. They told me to grab a drink when I was done." Then I heard shouting. "When I saw you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. You looked like you were trying really hard not to break. My throat tightened. I was. You held it together, he said quietly. Better than most people would. It was strange. I had been praised for business victories, negotiations, leadership strategies, but no one had ever acknowledged the strength it took just to roll into a room that judged me before I spoke. What about you? I asked. Do you always jump into strangers' disasters? His eyebrows pulled together in a slow shake of the head. Not usually, but you did tonight. He looked down at the ground for a moment, rubbing the back of his neck. Something in me just said, do something. It felt wrong not to. He glanced at me again, not shy, just thoughtful. You should not have to face that alone. The simplicity of it made my eyes sting again. He had not stepped in because of my title. He had not stepped in because he wanted a thank you. He had stepped in because he saw someone hurting and chose not to add to it. Do you want anything from me? I asked suddenly before I could take the words back. He blinked, confused. Want anything? People usually do. Money, access, a favor, a chance to say they stood up for the CEO of Winslow Tech. He looked genuinely startled. You are a CEO. I froze. He didn't know. Not even a clue. You did not recognize me in the restaurant. He shook his head. Should I have? I stared at him, partly stunned, partly relieved. Most people spotted me instantly. Articles, panels, social media. My face had been plastered on business magazines, but Cal just raised his brows. Look, I fix engines. I do not really keep up with CEOs unless they drive trucks that need work. A laugh burst out of me so sudden and unpolished it shocked both of us. He grinned, proud of himself for getting even that reaction. That is new, I admitted. What is new? Someone not knowing who I am. He shrugged again. Well, right now you are the woman who had a terrible date and needed some air. Not a headline, not a company, just you. The words settled over me softly like a blanket I did not expect to want. We stayed there by the river, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his mom's heart condition, the medical bills, the long nights that kept him working overtime. He talked about how he studied mechanical engineering for a year before dropping out because life demanded other things. But he spoke without bitterness, without shame, just honesty. And I found myself telling him small truths I rarely said aloud. How I hated elevators because they made me feel like everyone was staring. How I missed the feeling of running, even though it had been years. How I sometimes skipped events not from fear, but exhaustion. He did not flinch or pity me. He listened like someone who did not see me as broken at all. The silence that followed was heavy but peaceful, not the uncomfortable kind that begs to be filled, the kind that makes you want to stay. Eventually, the wind picked up and I shivered. Cal straightened immediately. Let me walk you to your car. I hesitated but nodded. As he walked beside me again, hands in pockets, steps steady and unhurried, I felt something unfamiliar building in my chest. Safety, not the performance of it, the real thing. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered if I had met someone who wanted nothing from me except to see me breathe a little easier. The next morning, I woke up with the same heaviness lodged in my chest, the kind that made my breaths feel shallow and reluctant. I replayed the night at Redwood Grill over and over, each detail hitting like a quiet bruise. The man's voice mocking me, the laughter the camera lens catching my humiliation like entertainment. And then Cal, his steady presence, his refusal to look away, his calm voice in a world that had been roaring in my ears. But morning light is cruel. It strips away warmth and replaces it with reality. So instead of feeling comforted, I felt raw again, exposed, angry at myself for being shaken, angry at the restaurant for letting it happen, and angry at the world for acting like scenes like that were normal. By noon, I found myself wheeling back into Redwood Grill. I didn't plan it. My hands just kept pushing the wheels until the familiar red awning loomed above me. Inside, the same tables stood in the same places, but now I felt eyes shift toward me with recognition. A server whispered to another. Someone lifted a phone subtly. My stomach twisted. A manager approached wearing a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Winslow," he said in that polite tone restaurants use when they hope you won't cause a scene. "I want the video taken down," I said immediately. "The live stream from last night. 2 teenagers posted it. It went semi-viral. I need you to ask them to delete it." His smile flattened. "We don't have control over customer content," he said. "And to be honest, it's actually bringing the restaurant a lot of attention." My jaw clenched. "Attention? It's humiliation." He didn't budge. "Actually, it's engagement. People are talking about Redwood Grill. Even negative publicity can be valuable." My hands curled around my wheel rims so hard my palms burned. I wanted to scream, to argue, to tell him what it felt like to have strangers replay your worst moment like it was comedy. But I knew exactly how this would end. They wouldn't take it down. They didn't care that I was a CEO. They didn't care that I was a woman in a wheelchair. They didn't care at all. I backed up, but right as I tried to turn, the same thick corner of carpet caught my left wheel. My stomach dropped. Not again. I jerked forward, trying to fix it before I tipped, but my wheel locked. My balance shifted. My chair began to tilt. A few customers gasped. A man stifled a laugh. And in that split second, I felt the exact same panic as last night, the humiliation crawling up my throat. Then someone's hands caught the handles of my chair. Steady. Controlled. Certain. I froze. My heart leapt. Only one person moved like that around me. I turned my head slowly, and there he was. Cal. This time he wasn't in a denim jacket. He wore a dark gray hoodie, sleeves pushed up, smell of engine grease faint in the air. His eyes met mine like he had been expecting to find me here. "You okay?" he asked, voice low enough that no one else could hear. I swallowed. "Yes, the carpet again." He nodded as if he understood far more than the words I managed to say. Then he looked at the customers still staring. His expression didn't change. He didn't glare. He didn't confront. He just stared back long enough that every single one of them looked away. Only then did he guide my chair backward, lifting the wheel slightly until it rolled free. My breath came out shaky. Cal stepped in front of me. "Thought you might be here," he said. I blinked. "You did?" He nodded. "Most people try to pretend nothing happened after something like last night. But you're not most people." I let out a tight laugh. "I'm not sure that's a compliment." "It is," he said simply. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. He took a paper cup from his jacket pocket and held it out. "I brought you tea." My throat tightened. "For me?" He shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." I took it, hands trembling. The cup was warm. Cal stood there quietly, waiting, without pushing, without prying. Something in his calm steadiness made the tightness in my chest ease just an inch. "You didn't have to come," I whispered. "I know. Then why did you—" He paused. His eyes softened. "Because no one should have to face the same pain twice alone." That was when my breath stilled. Not because of the words, but because he meant them. Every syllable. He walked beside me as I rolled out of the restaurant. We didn't speak until we reached the sidewalk, where the noise of passing cars muffled our silence. I wanted to thank him, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I said, "I'm going to the lake." He nodded. Want company, I did. I really did. And that scared me. "Yes," I said quietly. We reached the park 20 minutes later. I found a spot by the water, the breeze lifting my hair as the waves shimmered under the sun. Cal sat on the bench beside me, elbows on his knees, looking at the lake like it held answers to questions neither of us asked. After a long pause, I whispered, "Why are you being so kind to me?" He didn't look away from the water, because someone should be. The words hit deeper than I expected. Simple. True. A gentle strike straight to the parts of me that had been ignored for too long. I inhaled shakily. "You barely know me." He finally looked at me. "I don't need to know someone to see they deserve respect." My breath caught. No one had said something so pure to me in years. Maybe ever. We stayed by the lake until shadows grew long and the air carried the faint smell of pine and cooling earth. and for the first time since the accident 3 years ago, I felt something unfamiliar rising in the quiet space between us. A warmth I couldn't name yet, but I knew this Cal hadn't just shown up at the right time. He was showing up in the right way. That night at the lake lingered in my mind long after the sun disappeared. I kept replaying the way Cal looked at the water when he spoke like he was afraid to look directly at me because it might feel too intimate. And maybe it already was. I had not felt that exposed in a long time. Not because he made me uncomfortable, but because for the first time in years, someone saw me without the layers of CEO survivor or cautionary tale. He saw me as Claire, a woman sitting by the water trying to hold herself together. The next evening, after a long day of board meetings and quarterly reviews, my shoulders ached from tension and the neuropathic tingles in my legs were flaring. That was the thing no one prepared you for after spinal trauma. Pain did not politely stay where it belonged. It traveled, radiated, struck like lightning in muscles you thought were done betraying you. I tried heat packs, I tried stretching, I tried breathing through it the way my therapist had taught me. But by midnight, the pain hit a spike and my legs seized in a sharp cramp that sent a wave of panic through me. I hated this part. I hated how vulnerable it made me feel. I hated that even 3 years later, it could still take me down so fast. I pressed the emergency call button on my chair. Nothing. My phone vibrated on the table with a low battery warning and then died before I could dial anyone. The room dimmed as the lamp flickered. The only sound was my own breath becoming uneven. I closed my eyes and clenched my jaw, trying not to cry out. Then 3 knocks sounded at the door. Soft, steady, familiar. I froze. Claire Cow's voice, low, gentle, cautious. I swallowed a sob. "How did you know I was home?" He hesitated. "Your lights were on, but your car was gone earlier. I figured you might have come back late. I did not think you should be alone after yesterday." I wiped my eyes. "Come in." He stepped inside, quietly shutting the door behind him, before he took one look at me and everything in his expression changed. His eyes sharpened, his posture straightened, and every bit of gentle calm he usually wore shifted into focus. "What's wrong?" "Leg cramps," I whispered. "Bad ones." He knelt beside my chair instantly, hands steady as he evaluated the tension in my thighs and calves. "Can I help loosen it?" he asked softly. I nodded, breath hitching. He wrapped one hand around my knee to stabilize it and pressed the heel of his other hand into the tight muscle in slow circles. He moved carefully, attentively, never rushing or fumbling. The pain was sharp but familiar. My breath stuttered as he worked through the worst of it. He looked up once. His eyes met mine. "You do not have to hide pain from me, Claire." I blinked, hard tears slipping down before I could stop them. I hated crying in front of anyone. I hated how exposed it made me feel. But Cal did not flinch. He kept massaging until the tightness slowly released and the spasms eased. When I could breathe normally again, he sat back on his heels and rubbed his palms on his jeans. "You get these often." "Sometimes," I whispered. "They come out of nowhere." He nodded like he understood too well. "My mom used to get chest cramps when her heart condition flared. You cannot always predict when the body goes to war with itself." Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. That quiet sorrow in his voice. That unresolved ache. "Cal," I said softly. He shook his head like he was trying to steady himself. "I do not like seeing you hurt." His voice cracked at the end. My breath caught. I had never heard that roughness from him before. He wasn't just concerned. He was scared. He stood up and moved behind my chair, hands finding the handles. "Can I take you somewhere?" "Fresh air might help you breathe through the rest." I gave a small nod. "Yes, please." He wheeled me outside into the cool night, the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. We ended up at the small overlook above the river, a quiet place most people forgot existed. The water below reflected the city lights trembling with the breeze. Cal parked my chair beside the railing and sat on the ground next to me, knees drawn up, arms draped casually over them. The silence between us was warm, not awkward. After a long moment, he said, "I used to have dreams." I looked down at him. "What kind college?" "Engineering. A shop of my own. Maybe a small house." maybe a future that did not feel like patching holes in a sinking boat. His voice was calm, but the words carried the weight of a man who had spent too long trying to stay afloat. "So, why did you stop?" I asked gently. He picked at a loose thread on his sleeve. "My dad left when I was 10. My mom tried to hold everything together. She worked until her heart literally could not keep up, so I dropped out, worked wherever I could, paid the bills, took care of her." He paused, jaw tightening. "When she died, I kept working, kept fixing things. Cars, engines, everything except myself." My chest tightened. "Cal," he shook his head. "I am not saying it for pity. Just, I know what it feels like when life chooses for you." His eyes lifted to meet mine, and I know what it feels like to think you have to carry everything alone. The words hit a place in me I did not know was still tender. Because he was right. That was exactly what it felt like, carrying a world that didn't care if you broke beneath it. I exhaled shakily. 3 years ago, I was walking across a street after a board gala, I said quietly. A delivery truck turned too fast, and everything went black. He listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving mine. I woke up in a hospital bed with a doctor telling me that I would never walk again. My voice cracked. And everyone treated me like a fragile object, a project, a burden. But you never made me feel like that. Not once. His jaw clenched, and I saw something shift in him, something deeper and unspoken. "Claire," he murmured, "I am not afraid of your pain." Something in my chest broke open. Completely. The river shimmered below us, the air cool against my skin, and in that quiet stretch of night I realized something terrifying and beautiful. Our broken places were shaped differently, but they fit together, like two fractures forming one whole. And for the first time since my accident, I did not feel shattered. I felt seen, and that was far more dangerous than pain ever was. I did not notice it at first. Maybe because I was still trying to understand what Cal meant to me, or what I meant to him. Maybe because life had conditioned me to expect nothing. Soft, nothing unexpected, nothing generous that did not demand something in return. But little signs started appearing in my life. Small acts that looked like coincidences until they didn't. The first snowfall of December arrived early, and when I opened my front door for the morning air, I saw a perfect narrow path cleared from my steps all the way to the street. Clean, straight, measured exactly for the width of my wheelchair. The rest of the sidewalk was untouched. I stared at it confused. The snowplows hadn't come yet. My neighbors definitely hadn't done it. They rarely even brought their trash bins in on time. I remember feeling a strange warmth spreading through my chest, but I brushed it off. A one-time thing, a lucky morning. 2 days later, I received flowers, tulips, white ones my favorite. But the card simply said, "For the woman who keeps going," from someone who sees you. No name, no hint. I asked the delivery clerk, but he just shrugged and said the order was placed online. My assistant at work assumed it was from a secret admirer. I assumed it was a mistake, but deep down in the quiet corner of my mind where truth often hides, Cal's face flickered. Then the third thing happened. My front door frame had been slightly damaged for months. The wood had splintered from a shipping cart someone shoved too hard during a delivery. Every time I rolled through the entrance, the bottom corner of my chair snagged on the uneven edge. It was not a big issue, just enough to remind me of one more thing that used to be effortless, but now required adjustment and patience. One morning when I came home from a long board negotiation, the door frame was repaired. Perfectly sanded, repainted, leveled. My key slid in smoothly. My chair rolled over the threshold like butter. No note, no explanation. But I knew. I knew from the craftsmanship. I knew from the way the paint was matched slightly imperfectly, just a shade warmer than the original off-white. I knew because it was care disguised as practicality and practicality disguised as care. I knew it was Cal. And yet he did not mention any of it. Not a word, not even a hint. Like helping me was as natural as breathing. It terrified me. It disarmed me. It made me want something I wasn't sure I was allowed to have anymore. One evening after work, I decided to visit his garage unannounced. when I rolled in the scent of motor oil steel and something vaguely citrus filled the room. A radio hummed old rock songs in the background. Cal stood over an engine block, sleeves rolled up, forearms streaked with grease and muscle. He looked up mid-turn, surprised. "Claire." "You okay?" he asked, wiping his hands on a cloth. I nodded. "I just wanted to stop by." He hesitated, studying me as if trying to sense the real reason behind my visit. Then he gestured toward the side of the shop. "Want to see something?" I followed him to a corner where a wooden ramp stood leaning against the wall. A ramp, made for the exact height of his garage step. I stared at it. "Did you make this?" He cleared his throat softly, suddenly shy in a way I had never seen. "Yeah, figured the step was annoying for your chair." I ran my hand along the edge. The wood was smooth, the nails were perfectly spaced, every measurement was precise. "You built it, so I could visit." He shrugged awkwardly. "So you could come in easier." My heart thudded in my chest loud enough that it felt visible. "Cal, this is... I don't even know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," he replied quietly. Then softer, with a kind of truth that hit deeper than he probably realized. "I just want your world to be less heavy." My throat tightened so suddenly that speaking felt impossible. No one had ever said something like that to me. People helped me out of obligation, social expectation, or pity. But this was different. This was a man paying attention, remembering what strained me, studying the weight I carried without asking me to explain it, and then lifting pieces of it without needing to be thanked. I looked at him, really looked at him, and his eyes were lowered like he thought he might have overstepped. I wheeled closer, slow and deliberate, until the space between us shrank to something warm and fragile. "You didn't have to do any of this," I whispered. "I know," he replied. "Then why?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He looked at me then fully honestly without barriers. "Because someone should. Because you deserve soft things too." My breath caught, and for a moment the entire shop seemed to still. The flickering overhead light, the buzzing radio, the hum of the cooling engine. All of it faded into a muted world where only the two of us existed. Cal turned abruptly, as if afraid he had crossed a line, reaching for a wrench on the workbench to distract himself. I did not let him escape. I touched his wrist gently. He froze. "Thank you," I said softly. Not out of gratitude, out of something deeper, something growing, something that scared me more than pain ever had. He nodded once, swallowing. "Any time, Claire." On the way home that night, I realized something with frightening clarity. Cal was giving me pieces of kindness he did not even give himself. And that was how I knew he was starting to matter to me in a way I could not undo. A way that would change everything if I let it. The night it happened began like every other demanding night in my life as a CEO. A keynote address, hundreds of eyes, cameras rolling, investors watching every breath I took as though my body itself were a company asset they had purchased. I had done 1,000 events like this before, but that evening something felt off the moment I arrived backstage. A subtle dizziness pulsed behind my eyes. My fingers tingled. My legs ached with a deep electric burn that neuropathy loved to send like punishment for existing. I told myself I could push through it. I always did. I always had. I rolled out onto the stage with my signature collected expression, the one people said made me look unshakable. Lights hit my face in a warm blaze. The applause faded. And when I began speaking, I saw admiration in the audience. Respect. Sometimes awe. But no one ever saw what it cost me. 10 minutes in the spinning began. A slow tilt of the world. A strange heat climbing up my spine. My breath stuttered shallow and quick. I gripped the armrest of my chair. My vision pulsed. Not now. Not here. Not in front of everyone. My heartbeat pounded in my ears like thunder. The slide behind me blurred. My throat tightened and I tried to swallow, but it felt like trying to breathe through a straw. The moderator stepped forward, concern flashing across her face. "Claire, are you?" And then everything went black. I woke to bright hospital lights and the faint beeping of a monitor. My mouth tasted like metal. My head felt hollow, my chest heavy. I blinked slowly, disoriented, until shapes formed. A nurse, a monitor, a glass of water on the table. And then, Cal. He was in the chair beside my bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. His hair was messy, his jacket wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. I had never seen him look so shaken. Cal. My voice cracked barely a whisper. His head snapped up so fast the chair wobbled beneath him. Claire! Relief poured out of him so raw it tightened my throat. He stood so quickly he nearly tripped, then steadied himself and leaned over the bed. You scared me. You scared the hell out of me. His hands hovered over mine, not quite touching, as if he was afraid I might break. Or disappear. What happened? I asked. He exhaled shakily. Dehydration. Nerve pain overload. You passed out on stage. They called an ambulance. I got here as soon as I heard. You heard? He hesitated. I was watching your keynote online. I like hearing you speak. My chest tightened. I realized he must have witnessed everything. The dizziness, the collapse, the world tilting around me until my body gave out. How long have you been here? I whispered. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting away like he didn't want to admit it. Since they brought you in. They wouldn't let me back at first. He swallowed hard, so I waited. I did not leave until they agreed. There was something in his voice, something trembling, something he would never show the rest of the world. You thought I might die. The words came out softer than I intended. His breath caught. I have lost people before, Claire. I cannot. His voice cracked mid-sentence. I cannot lose you too. The weight of his fear broke something open inside me. I had been alone through every medical scare since my accident. Alone through the therapy, the pain spikes, the emergency room visits. Alone through the nights when my body betrayed me so aggressively I feared sleep because waking up hurt worse. But Cal, he stayed, even when he was not allowed, even when he was terrified, even when he had nothing to gain. I reached out, hand trembling, and brushed the edge of his sleeve. Cal, you shouldn't have to take care of me like this. He finally looked me in the eyes, anger flickering in the sadness. That is not what this is. I am not taking care of you because you are weak. I am here because you matter to me. The words hit so deep I forgot how to breathe for a moment. The nurse returned briefly, checking my vitals, adjusting my IV, giving us quiet glances that suggested she understood more than she let on. When she left, silence settled over us again, warm and heavy. Cal sat back down, but he did not lean forward this time. He rested one hand gently on the side of my bed, close enough that our hands almost touched. You push yourself too hard, he said quietly. You try to do everything alone. You think asking for help makes you a burden. But it doesn't. Not to me. My eyes stung. I turned my head away, blinking fast. He wasn't wrong. I was terrified of being too much, too demanding, too broken, too heavy for someone's life. My father had told me more than once that I came with maintenance, that men wouldn't stay, that independence was my only shield. And yet here was this man standing in a hospital room he had no obligation to enter, looking at me like I was not a burden, but a person worth fighting to remain near. I took a slow breath. Maybe I do push too hard. Maybe you should not. His voice was softer now, almost pleading. You do not have to be strong every minute of every day. His fingers brushed mine without warning light, but intentional. It was not a romantic touch. It was a grounding one. A touch meant to steady. A touch meant to stay. My voice broke. I do not know how to lean on people anymore. Then let me teach you. I stared at him, at his worn jacket, his tired eyes, his messy hair, his fear still lingering around the edges. And for the first time since the accident, I allowed myself to want something without guilt. I nodded barely. Okay. His shoulders sagged with relief. I will take you home when they release you, he murmured. I will stay for as long as you need, and maybe longer. My heart stumbled. Longer. That one word rewrote something inside me. Something fragile. Something hopeful. Something dangerous. Because if Cal stayed, really stayed, then I would have something to lose again. But that night, lying in a hospital bed while his hand steadied mine, I realized something simple and terrifying. I wanted him to stay anyway. Cal insisted on taking me home after the hospital discharged me. But when the nurse explained that I needed at least a week of reduced stress, regulated rest, and someone nearby in case of another collapse, he froze. Not in confusion, not in reluctance, in decision. "You are coming with me," he said quietly, without bravado, without hesitation. His voice was steady in that way his hands were steady when fixing a damaged engine. Sure, certain, capable. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him I could manage on my own, that I had assistants and staff and a penthouse designed for accessibility. But the truth was simple. My assistants did not stay at night. My penthouse, for all its sleek technology and quiet luxury, felt emptier than any place Cal had ever lived. So I let him wheel me down the hall into the elevator, out into the parking lot, and into his truck, and I let him take me home. His home. I did not know what to expect. I thought maybe clutter, unfinished repairs, car parts everywhere, or the sterile emptiness of a man who lived alone and did not let anyone in. What I found was warmth. A small living room washed in soft amber light from mismatched lamps. A couch with a woven blanket draped neatly across the back. Photos of his mother and his niece on a narrow shelf. A stack of books, mostly technical manuals alongside one old paperback with a cracked spine. The scent of coffee and sawdust lingered in the air. The place was not tidy in a staged way. It was tidy in a lived-in, cared-for way. A place with a pulse. He carried my bag inside and set it gently by the sofa before helping me roll across the threshold. The ramp he built earlier in the week fit perfectly. He motioned to the couch. "Do you want to lie down for a bit?" I shook my head. "The chair is fine." He nodded, not questioning, not hovering. Just accepting. Cal disappeared into the kitchen, and I heard the sound of a kettle filling the quiet click of a stove ignition. A few minutes later, he returned with a cup of warm peppermint tea, setting it on a small table he dragged closer to me. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the steam warm my face. "Thank you," I murmured. He pulled a wooden chair across from me and sat elbows resting on his knees. "You do not have to thank me, Claire." The words hung between us in the soft air, and I felt a swell of emotion unexpected and heavy. He watched me carefully, as if studying the way I breathed, the way I held myself. "Are you hurting?" he asked. "A little." He nodded, and I could see the helplessness flicker in his eyes. Pain made him uncomfortable, not because it bothered him, but because he could not fix it. He was a man who solved things with his hands, who tightened bolts and replaced parts and rewired what was broken. But I was a different kind of broken, a different kind of repair. "You should rest," he said quietly. "I will sit here for a while." "I should sleep," I admitted, "but I am not tired." He leaned back slightly. "That is okay. We can just sit." And we did. The silence in his house was not silence at all. It was gentle, almost warm. The refrigerator hummed softly. The wind rustled outside. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then quieted. But inside that small room, everything felt amplified. The way he looked at me without staring. The way he stayed close without crowding. The way he breathed a little deeper every time my face tightened, like he could somehow absorb the tension from me. Hours passed like that. Then slowly, something shifted. I noticed him avoid my eyes when I looked at him too long. I noticed the way he hesitated before adjusting the blanket around me, as if afraid the touch would mean something or reveal something. I noticed the way his hand brushed the back of the couch instead of brushing my arm, even though I could feel he wanted to. "Cal," I said quietly. He looked up quickly, eyes wide, as if I had caught him doing something forbidden. "Yes, you seem different." He swallowed. "I do not want to make you uncomfortable." "You haven't," I said, but he shook his head. "I could, and that scares me." My breath caught. "Scares you how?" He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. His fingers trembled just slightly. "I am trying not to cross any lines. You are here because you need rest. You are here because of what happened. You trust me." He exhaled. "I do not want to risk that trust by—" He trailed off, but the unspoken word sat between us, bright and impossible to ignore. Feeling something. I finished softly. His eyes lifted to mine, struck open and vulnerable. Yes. The air thickened around us. I felt my chest tighten, heat spreading beneath my skin. Because I felt it too. Every moment with him in that house felt like standing at the edge of something beautiful and terrifying. A small shift could send us tumbling into a place neither of us could climb out of unchanged. I rolled a little closer, the wheels soft against the rug. He watched me like I was moving in slow motion. "Cal," I whispered, "you could never make me uncomfortable." He closed his eyes briefly like the words physically hit him. "Claire." He stood abruptly, pacing a short line across the living room, rubbing the back of his neck. "I care about you more than I should." The confession came out rough, almost shaken. "I feel things I have not felt in years, and I do not know what to do with it." My pulse pounded. "Then look at me and tell me what you feel." He turned slowly, eyes landing on me with a force that made my breath falter. Want, protection, fear, all tangled together. He dragged in a breath. "I feel everything when I look at you." My heart almost cracked open. "Then come closer," I whispered. He shook his head helplessly. "I cannot. Not unless you ask me to." Every part of me wanted to. Every part of me screamed too. But the fear inside me, the fear of becoming someone's burden again, of being loved as an obligation, tangled with longing. I inhaled slowly. "I will, but not tonight." His shoulders lowered as if he had been carrying a weight he did not know how to put down. "Okay." We sat in silence again, but it was different now. Charged, fragile, full. In that small house with quiet walls and loud emotions, we were two people trying not to break each other, and failing in the most beautiful way. For days after I returned home, Cal kept checking in on me the way someone checks on something fragile, not because they doubt its strength, but because they care too much about what happens if it breaks. Short texts, quick visits, quiet moments that hovered between friendship and the kind of affection neither of us dared name. But the night it all broke open started like something gentle. He had come by after his shift, smelling faintly of engine oil and winter air hair still damp from a quick shower at the garage. I was sitting in my living room wrapped in a blanket, a book open but unread in my lap. He stepped inside with that soft knock he always used, the one that said he'd leave if I so much as breathed the wrong way. "Hey," he murmured. "Hey," I answered. He dropped his jacket on the armchair, kicked off his boots, and sat cross-legged on the rug near my chair. Something in his posture was off. He wasn't relaxed like usual. His shoulders were tense, his eyes not meeting mine. "Long day?" I asked. He nodded, but the answer was too quick, too simple. He was hiding something. I'd learned the shape of his silences. This one felt heavy, like a weight he'd been carrying alone. I closed the book. "Cal, what is it?" He swallowed hard, eyes trained on his hands. "I have been thinking about something." Those 6 words tightened the air between us. I shifted forward slightly. "Tell me." He hesitated. His throat worked. Then he finally looked at me, and the fear in his eyes nearly knocked the breath from my chest. "Claire, I don't know how to say this without hurting you." My heart stilled. "Are you leaving?" His eyes widened. "No, God, no. I need to ask you something." He crawled closer until he was right in front of me, knees nearly touching the footplates of my chair. His voice lowered raw and trembling. "Why do you trust me?" The question hit like a slap. What I whispered. "Why me? Why put any part of your heart in my hands?" "I'm no one. I am a mechanic with a small paycheck and a broken past. You're you. You're brilliant, powerful, everything I'm not. When you look at me like I matter, it feels like I'm stealing something that isn't mine." I stared at him stunned. "Cal!" He held up a hand, his expression desperate. "Let me finish. Because the truth is, I feel more for you than I should. I feel too much. More than someone like me has any right to feel. And that terrifies me." My pulse hammered. I could hear it in my ears. And then, before I could stop myself, before fear could drag me back behind my walls, I said the words I had been holding inside since the night he carried me from the stage in the hospital. "Cal, I think I'm in love with you." Silence. Thick, absolute silence. His entire body went still, his breath hitched, his eyes widened like I had set something on fire between us. Claire, no. The word cut like a blade. No, I whispered, the air disappearing from my lungs. He backed away from me, not far, but enough that the space felt like a chasm. His voice was strained, breaking. Claire, you deserve someone who isn't this. Someone who isn't worn down. Someone who can match your world. Someone who isn't broken. I felt the words slice through me with surgical precision. People had said many awful things to me since the accident, but this hurt most because it came wrapped in love and fear, not cruelty. Cal, I said carefully, you're not broken. I am too, he whispered, more than you know. I rolled closer, reaching out a hand, but he flinched, not away from my touch, but from what it meant. No, Claire, please, don't. It would be easier if you hated me. My voice cracked. Why are you doing this? Because I cannot give you the life you deserve. Because if I let myself love you openly, I will want more than I should, and you will wake up one day and realize I'm the thing holding you back. My chest tightened, the pain sharp and breath stealing. That is not true. He looked away, jaw clenched. It is. And the worst part is, I want you anyway. I want you so much it scares me. Then stop running from it. I begged, my voice trembling. Stop running from me. He shook his head violently. I can't. Claire, you don't understand. Loving you would ruin you. I felt something inside me tear. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly like a seam that had been holding too much for too long. Cal, I whispered, every word, shaking, you're not protecting me. You're hurting me. His face twisted in agony. Claire, please don't cry. But I already was, because it didn't feel like rejection. It felt like watching a man drown while convincing himself he was keeping me afloat. I straightened my shoulders. My voice steadied even though my hands trembled. I can't stay here tonight. Not if you think so little of yourself. Not if you think loving me is a burden you're taking on. I reached for my bag. Claire, wait. He stood so fast the chair behind him tipped, hitting the floor with a dull thud. His voice cracked. I didn't say I don't love you. I'm saying I'm not enough. Tears blurred the room. You don't get to decide what I deserve. He took a step toward me, agony written across his entire face. Claire, please, stay. But if I stayed, I would be agreeing with his fear. I would be telling him he was right to think he needed to be more for me to love him. And I couldn't do that, not to him, not to myself. So I whispered the hardest words I've ever said. I can't stay where I'm half wanted. And then I rolled past him out the door into the cold night air. Rain had started to fall thin and sharp. Behind me on the porch, I heard a sound I had never heard from him before, a quiet, broken noise like something inside him collapsing. I didn't turn around, because if I did, I would never be able to leave. The first morning without Cal felt wrong in ways I could not name. My penthouse was silent, but not the peaceful kind. It was the hollow kind, the kind of silence that reminded you what used to fill it. I tried to return to my life as if nothing had happened. I threw myself into work with the same discipline that had built my company, attended meetings, signed deals, smiled at board members who complimented my resilience like it was a personality trait instead of emotional scar tissue. But something was missing, something small, yet enormous. The quiet nod Cal gave me before I started a stressful call. The way he steadied my chair without asking when the ground was uneven. The soft, almost imperceptible hum he made when concentrating a sound that had somehow become comforting. Every room felt too large without him standing somewhere in it. Every evening felt too empty without his voice saying goodnight in that low, almost shy way. I lasted 4 weeks before I realized I was rearranging my schedule around memories of him. 6 weeks before I stopped refusing to open the picture we took at the lake, the only picture we ever took together. 8 weeks before the loneliness hit a point where I found myself sitting on the kitchen floor at 2 in the morning tracing the lines of the wooden tiles and wondering why missing someone who never fully became mine hurt worse than losing people who had. 3 months in, I moved to Portland. I told the board I wanted to expand our West Coast operations, but everyone knew I was running. Running from a man who had cracked open a part of me I thought was beyond healing. Running from a confession that had torn us both apart. Portland was quiet, rainy, slower, and in the beginning, that helped. I built new routines, hired new staff, found new restaurants with ramps wide enough for my chair. People were polite, conversations were casual. No one knew about the Redwood Grill incident. No one recognized me in grocery stores. It was peaceful in the way a bandage is peaceful not because the wound is healed, but because you cannot see it anymore. But even there, he lingered. I would pass a mechanic shop and my chest would tighten. I would smell coffee mixed with motor oil somewhere on the street, and every nerve in my body would react like I had heard his voice. I would see a jacket like his denim worn soft from years of use and have to blink away a rush of emotion sharp enough to steal my breath. At night, I read books I could not focus on because the words blurred into the memory of his voice, saying, "I feel everything when I look at you." I tried dating again, once. A man from a venture firm. He was kind, charming, intelligent. But the way he talked felt too polished. The way he looked at me felt too careful. And halfway through the date, when he bent down to adjust the napkin I had dropped, his hands trembled with pity, not natural kindness. I pulled away, murmuring something about needing air. As he apologized 3 times in 20 seconds, I realized with a painful clarity that the only man who had ever touched anything around me without pity was Cal. That night, I cried until I fell asleep. Somewhere around the 10-month mark, I stopped pretending. I missed him. Deeply, quietly, constantly. I missed the way he listened without trying to fix everything in my life, even though he desperately wanted to fix everything. I missed the way he existed beside me, steady, soft present, without asking for anything in return. I missed the way he looked at me like I was not something brave or tragic or impressive, but simply someone he cared about. On the other side of the country in the town I left behind, Cal was unraveling in his own quiet way. I did not know the details then, not yet, but pieces reached me through mutual acquaintances. The head of the garage mentioned during a routine check on my car that Cal had started taking extra shifts. Another mechanic posted a picture from the shop's charity event, and in the background I saw Cal standing alone near a workbench, shoulders tense, smile small and temporary. One day, a mutual friend forwarded a photo from the town harvest festival. People were laughing, dancing, eating cotton candy. In the corner of the frame, Cal sat on a bench alone, staring at the ground with a haunted kind of stillness I recognized instantly. Missing me had carved something out of him, too. One night, month 11, I received a message request on Instagram from someone I did not know. It was a blurry picture. The garage, the lights dim. Cal sitting on the floor against a tool cabinet, head tipped back, eyes closed, looking exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. The caption said, "He talks about you sometimes. Not by name, just her." I stared at that picture until my vision blurred, until my chest ached, until I felt like I was being hollowed out from the inside. I typed dozens of responses, deleted all of them, because what would I say I left because he believed he wasn't worthy? I stayed away because I didn't want to confirm his fear. I missed him like oxygen. Instead, I texted no one. I just sat there holding my phone to my chest as tears ran silently down my face. 12 months after the night I left his porch, I returned to our old city. My best friend Emily needed surgery and had no family nearby. I promised I would help, and I meant it, but part of me knew the truth I wasn't ready to say aloud. I came back because my heart wasn't done with him. I came back because missing him had become its own kind of ache. I came back because he was the only person who had ever looked at my wheelchair and still seen me. When the plane landed, my hands shook on the armrest. I told myself I wouldn't look for him. I told myself I wouldn't go near the garage. I told myself I wasn't that weak. but grief has a way of unearthing honesty. And the honest truth was simple. I wanted to see him again, even if it destroyed me. When I finally returned to my old city, it felt like stepping into a memory that had been frozen in time and was now thawing painfully slow. The streets looked the same, the lights felt the same, even the air tasted like something I had tried desperately to forget. Emily's surgery went smoothly, and once she was settled in recovery, I stepped outside the hospital for a breath of air. The cold bit at my cheeks, but it was nothing compared to the sharp, familiar ache pulsing behind my ribs. I wasn't sure what I expected to find in this city. Closure, maybe. Peace. Or maybe I was just hoping the universe would tell me whether the empty place in my chest was supposed to stay empty forever. I didn't plan to go into the flower shop that night. My hands turned the wheels of my chair without permission, following muscle memory down streets I once traveled with a man who treated me like something fragile and something strong at the same time. The rain had stopped, leaving the sidewalks damp and reflective, glowing under street lamps like quiet lanterns. When the bell above the flower shop door chimed, I nearly turned around immediately, not because I was afraid, but because I was too afraid of hope. Then I saw him, standing at the far end of the store, his back slightly hunched, the way it always was when he concentrated. His hands were dirty, not with grease this time, but with pollen and streaks of yellow from the sunflowers he was holding. Sunflowers, the same flower I once told him I loved. They're stubborn, I once said with a laugh. Like me, they always find the light. He held them like someone who had forgotten what happiness felt like but was trying to remember. My heart squeezed so tightly I swore it might stop. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Then he turned, and when his eyes landed on me, the bouquet slipped slightly in his hand. His lips parted, his breath caught. My name didn't leave his mouth, but I saw it in the way his entire face changed. Shock, relief, pain, all tangled together. Claire! His voice cracked on my name. He looked older, not in years, but in worry, in exhaustion, in the weight of 12 months without peace. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just looked at each other, two people who had loved each other silently, then ripped apart by fear louder than any confession. I forced air into my lungs and managed high cal. Something in him broke at the sound of my voice. He took one step toward me, stopped, swallowed hard, then came closer with hesitant, trembling movements, as if afraid I might vanish if he moved too fast. Please, he whispered, his voice raw. Please don't roll out that door again. Every ounce of strength I'd spent a year trying to rebuild dissolved. My throat tightened. My breaths came fast. Cal. Why now? He placed one hand gently on the wheel of my chair, not stopping me, but grounding himself. His fingers trembled against the metal. Because he whispered, and I had never heard him sound so vulnerable. I spent a year trying to convince myself you'd be better off without me. And every day, every single day, I woke up wishing I hadn't let you go. My chest burned. I blinked against the sting in my eyes. You left me standing in the rain, I said softly. He flinched. I know, and I hate myself for it. He let out a shaky breath. I thought loving you meant doing what was good for you, not what I wanted. I thought I wasn't enough, that I'd hold you back. His voice broke completely. But losing you, Claire, it is the one thing I will regret for the rest of my life if I don't say this now. The flower shop blurred through my tears. Say what I whispered. He kneeled beside my chair so our eyes were level. His hand hovered near mine, but didn't touch like he wanted to, but was afraid of breaking some delicate part of me he had once held with care. I love you. The words were soft, honest, unsteady, like they were being spoken for the first time in his life. My heart stopped. Then it slammed against my ribs. His chest rose and fell hard. I love you, Claire Winslow, not because you're strong or brave or brilliant, not because you fought your way back to build a life after everything was taken from you. I love you because when I'm with you, I'm not afraid of who I am. You make me want to be better. You make me feel like the world isn't as heavy as it is. I broke completely. Tears streamed down my face before I could wipe them away. He reached up slowly and brushed one tear from my cheek with a touch so gentle it made my breath catch. Please, he whispered. If there's even the smallest part of you that still wants me, tell me. I'll spend every day earning whatever chance you give me." My voice shook. "I never stopped wanting you." His head bowed a shudder, leaving his chest as if relief itself had weight. I leaned forward, pressing my forehead to his. His hand finally closed around mine, and for the first time in a year, the space between us felt right again, felt whole, felt like home. We stayed that way for a long moment, the world soft around us, the smell of roses and eucalyptus wrapping around the air. Two people finally choosing each other without fear. When he stood, his hand never left mine. "Come with me," he said softly, the same words he used the night we met. But this time, his voice held no command. Only hope, only love, only truth. I nodded, unable to stop smiling through my tears. "Wherever you are," I whispered, "I'm already coming with you." He exhaled a shaking breath and pulled me close. And in a small flower shop on a quiet street, Cal Becker finally stopped running, and I finally felt found. The weeks after we found each other again felt like stepping into a world that had always existed beneath my feet, waiting for me to finally stop running and stand still long enough to feel it. Cal and I did not rush anything. We did not try to pretend that a year of silence had not left its scars or that the night he confessed erased the ache I carried for months. Instead, we chose something simple. We chose honesty. We chose presence. And slowly, piece by piece, we built something new out of the broken places we had both tried so hard to hide. The day he asked me to visit his garage again, I felt a knot in my stomach. Not fear, not dread. Something like tenderness wrapped in vulnerability. The place had been the starting point of everything: our friendship, our connection, our fracture. When I rolled through the open door, the scent of engine oil and steel hit me like a memory I had once tried to bury. Cal had cleaned the space more than usual, but he hadn't tried to make it something it wasn't. His workbench was still cluttered with wrenches and bolts. His jacket still hung near the back door. And there, in the center of the room, was a small table draped in a simple white cloth with a mason jar full of fresh daisies. My breath caught. "I remember you said they were stubborn," he murmured from behind me. "Like you." I turned my chair toward him, blinking away the warmth rising behind my eyes. "I'm not stubborn," I said. "Sure?" he replied with that crooked smile. "And engines don't need oil." We shared a quiet laugh, the kind that felt like a secret being passed back and forth in the air between us. That night, surrounded by the chorus of tools and the faint hum of the radio he always kept on low volume, he said it. "I want you in my life for good," he whispered. "Not because I think you need me, but because I can't imagine the world without you in it." There was no ring yet, no dramatic gesture, just a man who had rebuilt himself enough to believe he was worthy of being loved. And that meant everything. 3 months later, we held our engagement celebration right there at the garage. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a ballroom or a rooftop garden or a corporate event hall like the ones I used to walk through in my former life. Instead, it was real, intimate, honest. Strings of warm yellow lights hung from the rafters, swaying softly every time someone walked by. Neighbors brought folding chairs. A friend from the flower shop arranged bouquets in old paint cans. The garage crew grilled burgers outside, insisting it was a tradition, even though I was fairly certain they'd invented the tradition that same afternoon. People came who had known Cal his entire life. People came who had only met me once but wanted to celebrate something that felt rare. And about an hour into the celebration, the room quieted in a way I instantly recognized. My father stood at the door. William Winslow looked smaller than I remembered, as if the weight of years had finally caught up to him. His suit was neatly pressed, but his eyes were not as sharp as they once were. He approached slowly, every step deliberate. Cal went still beside me, but he didn't move away. He placed one hand on the back of my chair, steady and sure. My father stopped in front of us, cleared his throat, and looked at Cal with a guarded, unreadable expression. Then he extended his hand. "I misjudged you," he said quietly. "And I misjudged what my daughter needed." Cal hesitated only a second before shaking his hand firmly. The garage filled with soft applause. My father turned to me, his voice cracking slightly. "You look happy," he whispered. "For the first time in years." I smiled. "I am." He nodded once, the kind of nod that carried years of apology behind it, then stepped back to let the rest of the celebration continue. Later that evening, after the cake had been cut and laughter had filled every corner of the garage, Cal walked toward me with that familiar warmth in his eyes and whispered, "Come with me." I looked up at him, familiar words stirring something deep and glowing inside my chest. "Where are we going?" "Just trust me," he said. He wheeled me gently out the back of the garage, down a narrow path lit by leftover festival lights, until we reached a small stretch of beach just beyond the property. The moon hung low over the water, soft waves brushing the sand in slow, welcoming strokes. He knelt down in front of me. "You ready?" he asked. My breath trembled. "For what?" "For the moment you told me you didn't think you'd ever get again." He slipped one arm around my waist, the other beneath my knees, and lifted me carefully from my chair. My body pressed against his chest, warm and steady. My heart beat so fast I could barely think. He lowered me gently, placing my bare feet onto the cool sand. The grains shifted under me, soft, imperfect, alive. My legs trembled, but he held me tight enough that I felt safe to trust the moment. "One step," he whispered by my ear. "Just one." With me, I leaned into him, and slowly, so slowly, it felt like time held its breath. I took a single step forward, then another. My arms clutched his shoulders, tears dripping onto his shirt, but he didn't flinch or rush or let go. When I looked up, his eyes were shining. "You caught me when I was falling," I whispered. "In every way." He pressed his forehead to mine. "I'll be here for every step after." The ocean breathed around us. The world softened, and in that moment, standing between the tide and the man who loved me without fear, I felt something I had not felt since before the accident. Peace. Real peace. Not the fragile kind built on pretending, the kind built on choosing, on healing, on love. We stood there until the stars came out. Two silhouettes leaning into each other, one standing, one supported, both whole in ways we had never imagined. A life built not from perfection, but from broken pieces we no longer had to hide. A life built together. If this story stayed with you, if you felt even a flicker of recognition in Claire's journey, then linger with me for one more moment, because what you just witnessed was never just a love story. It was a reminder of something most of us forget far too easily. We live in a world that tells us we have to be strong every minute, that we should hide our pain, hide our scars, hide the moments when life brings us to our knees. And yet, the truth is this: every one of us has been where Claire once sat, maybe not in a wheelchair inside a crowded restaurant, maybe not facing a cruel stranger who turned her into a spectacle. But we have all felt the sting of being misunderstood, underestimated, dismissed, or told we were too broken to be loved. We have all felt alone in a room full of people. We have all waited for someone to see us, not for our flaws, but for our humanity. And if you are being honest with yourself, there was probably someone in your past the way Cal appeared in hers. Someone who walked in quietly, unexpectedly, right when life felt its heaviest. Someone who didn't try to fix you, but simply refused to leave you behind. That is why stories like this matter. Not because they're dramatic, not because they're romantic, but because they remind us that even in the darkest chapters of our lives, kindness has a way of slipping in through the smallest cracks. Sometimes as a stranger, sometimes as a friend, sometimes in the form of a person who speaks softly, listens deeply, and loves without judgment. And maybe as you watched Claire take her first steps on that beach, leaning into someone who held her without fear or pity, maybe you saw a piece of your own story. Maybe it reminded you of a moment you once survived, or a moment you still hope to reach. Maybe it stirred something in your chest you didn't know was still there. If it did, then do not let that feeling fade the moment this video ends. Let it linger. Let it remind you that you deserve gentleness no matter your past, that you deserve to be seen even in your quietest moments, that you are still capable of being loved, of healing, of starting again at any age, at any stage, with any wounds. And if you want more stories like this, stories that speak to the heart you've built over a lifetime, stories that honor the battles you've fought and the resilience you've earned, then stay with us. Truly stay. Hit that like button not for the algorithm, but so others who need this message can find it. Share this story with someone who might be fighting a silent battle. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Soul-Stirring Stories, because our mission is simple, to bring you tales that heal, that soften the hard edges of the world, that remind you that love doesn't vanish with age, kindness doesn't weaken with time, and second chances often arrive when we least expect them. You deserve a place where stories speak to the parts of you that are still tender, still hopeful, still brave. And if this story touched you, if it made you feel seen even for a moment, then this is your place. Stay with us. Let these stories remind you that no matter how broken life has been, you are never beyond the reach of something beautiful. Until next time, stay gentle with yourself. Stay open to the small miracles. And remember this: even on the days you feel alone, someone out there is rooting for your healing, just like Cal rooted for Claire. And so are we.